Good morning to all, good afternoon to all, and welcome to this webinar on a very important topic, that is machine learning for climate change analysis. And we are thankful to Professor Pabitra Mitra, who has kindly agreed to deliver this webinar for all of us. This particular webinar is being organized as part of Bharat Ki Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which we are celebrating and will be completing 75 years on 15th August 2022. This celebration started on 12th March 2021 and will be culminating on 15th August. And we are planning a lot of events. We started with one brainstorming session where agriculture can be a subject at school level. With CBSE, NCERT, and Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan coming to that workshop. Then we had several webinars, including on data analytics, then one on entrepreneurship, and one on food and nutrition. And today we are going to have on machine learning from Professor Pabitra Mitra. He is a professor of computer science and engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. He did his BTech in electrical engineering from IIT Kharagpur, and then PhD in computer science from Indian Statistical Institute, Calcutta. If I am correct, in 2004. He has worked in the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics at Bangalore and IIT Kanpur. His research areas are machine learning and data mining. In 25 years of his career, he has published a large number of research papers in Journal of International Repute and several books in the area of pattern recognition, machine learning, and deep learning. Dr. Mitra is a highly cited researcher with more than 9,000 citations by now. He received Indian National Academy of Engineers Young Engineer Award, IBM Faculty Award, and Yahoo Faculty Award. He has participated in large number of international conferences. He has supervised a number of PhD and MSc, more than 50, at IIT Kharagpur. Dr. Pavitra, if I go on listing your contributions, they will be endless. Therefore, I will not be coming in between you and the esteemed audience who are eager to listen to you on machine learning for climate change analysis. Dr. Pavitra Mitra, floor is yours for next 50-55 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I am so honored. It was when the email came to me for willingness, I was very honored, because I have been always knowing about the reputed scientist, the distinguished scientist. It has been among the leading scientists in our country. And I am so honored. I could not imagine that I will be able to deliver this talk. I am very happy. I will try to share some of the work. We have been recently, as you know, IIT Kharagpur is the only IIT with a Department of Agriculture and Food Engineering. And we have been working closely with them in application of artificial intelligence in agriculture sciences and other. And so it is very close to our heart. We are very actively working. And it's my guest opportunity to present. I will be presenting on a topic which is I thought will be very important for the next few years, and where machine learning, although machine learning in agriculture is a very wide field now, it's a very widely studied area. Many people apply to it, machine learning to agriculture problems and vice versa. I will focus on a small area of that, which is related to climate science. I'll quickly share my screen. I'll stop the video and share my screen. Yes, sir, can you please confirm if it is visible?
Yeah, it is visible. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So I'll start maybe. So my talk will be on how to use machine learning to manage climate change, and I will focus particularly on the topics related to agricultural sciences. So my broad outline will be like this. I will talk about different aspects of the climate change which are important, which should be studied. And I will briefly tell about what machine learning is. I am sure all of you know it, but I'll still highlight to put the context. Then I will see some of what is the role that machine learning can play, particularly in the context of agriculture, for climate change analysis. And of course, there are many such applications that are already being studied. I will just highlight few of the case studies, but it is a wide area. I'll just highlight few of the case studies that has been receiving some importance. Okay, so maybe I'll minimize this. Yes. So I don't want to dwell much on climate change. All of us know that it is a very imminent thing, unavoidable thing, and it is going to have serious impact all over the world. Particularly in India, there are some aspects of climate change which are going to be quite impactful. The first thing is that the temperature projections of India. So this is kind of a simulation model which runs temperature prediction for the future. There are two scenarios. One is we impose climate restrictions, we restrict our carbon emissions, we minimize our carbon emissions and follow other climate friendly practices. Then this is going to be the scenario. I'll explain what this means. And if we carry on as we are carrying on, then this will be the scenario. And what the scenario says, even in the best case, that a moderate heat wave kind of situation is going to increase, going to impact several regions of the country very much. So almost all of central India is going to be severely affected. And the worst case is going to be really severely affected. The region around Chhattisgarh, Nagpur, Madhya Pradesh, it's going to be severely affected. And other regions are also going to be affected. All the regions are almost going to be affected. So this is perhaps the, and this is not only for India, this will be for all of Southeast Asia. And this is perhaps something we need to be start planning about. And this is according to the 2018 study by Mani et al. This will have several impact on agriculture, as you know much better. This will change the cropping pattern. This will change many such effects. Another important aspect is because we know our country is heavily dependent on monsoon, on the summer monsoons. It is heavily dependent. So what the prediction says, according to a study by IMD, what it says, the total amount of rainfall, aggregated amount of rainfall will perhaps not change much. It has been following a downtrend since 1970s. It has been going down, but no major change will happen. But what the projection is that the variability in rainfall, the extreme events, the heavy rainfall, they are going to increase. So cloudburst, heavy rainfall, inundations, like we had in Chennai, Mumbai, even in Calcutta just last week. They are going to increase in frequency. They are going to be very common. This has a very severe impact on agriculture because even though normal rainfall is the same, this kind of heavy rainfall or drought situations, so the opposite of this, there is a drought situation. These extremes, as you all know, very severely affects agriculture. So we have to plan accordingly. Okay, so this is kind of from Wikipedia it is taken, and because of all these changes, the weather pattern of India is going to be, this is the weather pattern currently, according to Wikipedia. This is the kind of weather variation all over the country. And most of it is this part where you have a tropical monsoon, tropical savanna kind of pattern, and that is going to spread. So this part where you have a temperate dry winter, hot summer, this Uttar Pradesh, Himachal, Haryana, this part is going to shrink and it is going to be taken over by the dry savanna kind of weather. So this is the prediction. This is the prediction maybe 70 years from, not 70, 50 years from now. This is the prediction about 50 years from now. Again, as we all know that meteorological factors are, agrometeorological factors are a huge variable determining agriculture. So we should also be worried about these things. Besides these large scale changes, there are many local changes due to climate change that will happen in India. One of the severe problem, as we know, that glaciers in the Himalayas are receding. The Gangotri Glacier, as we all know, who have visited it earlier will know that it has receded it a lot. There is a huge threat in India about global submerging. So the Sundarban and coastal Odisha, this region are already facing this problem. Every time there is a natural disaster, there is a submerging of the area, salinity increases, it becomes no longer stays fit for agriculture. So this is some local problems that we need to be worried about. And of course, the frequency of natural disasters like forest fire, drought, cyclones, those of us who live near to the coast feel it every year, that these are going to be increased. And this also, the loss of agriculture is, human loss is now reduced to minimum because of IMD's predictions, but the agricultural loss still cannot be prevented. So these are some more impacts which we have to think about. And as I told that the vulnerability of the food security is going to increase because of this weather change. So some of the regions are going to be the agriculture in some of the regions are going to be very vulnerable, something very highly vulnerable, then moderately, and some of the places are not going to have so much of vulnerability. So this is the vulnerability map of food security vulnerability map. And this is a projected map that is going to happen. And many commodities like rice, wheat, so red means it is going to be negatively impacted. Blue means mixed impact, positive means it will actually be helpful for this kind of area. So this is an impact on that several agricultural commodities and livestock commodities that climate change is projected to impact. And this may lead to several adaptations. For example, it may lead to heavy crop switching to safeguard against this vulnerability. There has to be crop switching. And we'll soon see later, many of these planning about crop switching and others can be very much facilitated by machine learning, where you first do a prediction. And because the only thing is that you can only simulate these future scenarios. We are not yet 50 years from now. We have to only simulate. And based on this simulation, based on the data, what can be the cropping behavior, what can be the phenological behavior of the crops, that we can only simulate and learn from the data. We cannot actually see, except for small experimental patches, we cannot see them. So here is one area where people have been using machine learning a lot. Okay, so besides these meteorological impacts, there are many indirect impacts in agriculture also, because the climate change is not only going to affect agriculture, it is also going to affect our energy consumption, energy generation patterns, transportation patterns, societal practices, and the economy. It is going to affect all this. And these are going to indirectly affect agriculture. This may lead to decrease in productivity. This may lead to more natural hazards, more reduced water resources. Very important, many people have been observing the farmers is that because of this climate change, the disease and parasites, their patterns are changing and their impact is also changing. And there are indirect impacts, like there are, for example, the economic practice has changed. So the farm management practices has changed, the demand has changed. So all this effect. Okay, so the consumer demand, preservation, all this will change. So accordingly, adaptation has to be done. So there are many more. It's a complex, what will happen in future, it's not so easy. It's pretty complex to decide. There are many risks. So not only in India, studies have been done in other places as well. And people say that there is a cyclic effect. So climate change is affected by the energy consumption, the fossil fuels. It affects the water, and in turn they affect food. And there is a cyclic effect among them, a positive feedback effect among them. Okay, so some of the phenomena, for example, there was a European heat wave in 2019. So they kind of created havoc in agriculture. Okay, and several of these demand change. For example, the palm oil plantation, which we always are in heavy demand, the palm oil plantation results in lot of deforestation. So that again has a cyclic effect on the climate change. Many other, for example, there have been things like because of the overuse of fertilizers, the drain-off of fertilizers to the water bodies, and because of this climate change, there has been huge algae population development in the water bodies, in the rivers, other places, canals. So this algae population again contributes to climate change. And of course, there is a huge change. This is a study in Europe. The Aral Sea has completely vanished away because of climate change. So the studies are there all over the world, and several impacts. We don't have to wait till 2050. We are already seeing them. So many risks are coming in. Okay, so here is a broad picture, a summary of what we perceive currently as climate change impacts. There will be direct climate change impacts in terms of the phenology of the crops, in terms of the physiological changes in the crop, phenotyping changes, productivity changes as a result. So this will be the direct effects. There will be indirect effects in terms of soil fertility, water availability, sea level rise, pest and other flood, drought, disasters. So there will be indirect effects. Okay, and also there will be socio-economic effects in terms of food demand, farmers' policies, costs, unequal distribution. So all these will affect the agricultural production, will affect the vulnerability. And what climate change studies does is that it basically tries to find out what can be human interventions in order to adapt to these changes or in order to avoid these changes, in order to mitigate these changes. What can be our policies? So there are IPCC recommendations, there are studies by several organizations, several agricultural organizations. There are grand challenges to study future of the food programs about the effect of climate change. There are many, and this has become a very hot area of research. Okay, so now let us quickly come to what we actually mean, what are the different aspects of climate change study. So there are basically three aspects. What happens is that you take a climate model, because see, there is no way we can transport ourselves to the future. So we can only do a simulation study. So what this is done is that there are circulation climate models, global climate models. They simulate future scenarios. And these future scenarios are based on different emission scenarios and response models. Okay, so these are kind of global model. And these climate models will make some prediction about the global impacts of climate change in the 30 to 100 years in future range. Okay, and across the globe. And based on these projections, there are some mitigation policies, some avoidance policies. So it's a feedback loop. So for example, if we believe that this is going to happen, what can we do to cut down emission? How much emission you should cut down? So these are the part of the mitigation policies. And point to be noted is that mitigation policies are kind of global policies, because these are global models. So something happening in India will also affect America. And so these recommendations are often across countries. These are coordinated. Recently, we have seen our Honorable Prime Minister have visited a climate change summit where India has declared to take into account to contribute to this. So these are global policies. All nations come together and take care of that. Then there are regional models. These global models are downscaled to regional models, and the local impact, say maybe in a state, in a district or a country, they are kind of forecasted. And these are for shorter terms, maybe within 20, 25, 40 years. These are shorter term impacts. And based on these shorter term calculations, the uncertainty in these are perhaps less than the uncertainty in global modeling. So a very broad scale policies are only formulated in the mitigation, whereas in the local scale, more concrete, more focused adaptation policies and plannings are made. For example, do you build shelters, disaster shelters? Do you change the cropping pattern? Do you change the irrigation pattern? So all these are local changes, local planning, which can be implemented at the ground level. These are planned. So there are three aspects. So the first aspect here we see, it is called a prediction or a projection problem. So based on different scenarios, how do you make a prediction or a projection? And then these are mitigation policies. What things we do to reduce the effect of climate change? And then there are adaptation policies. So assuming that climate change will happen, what precautions or what planning you do beforehand? And all these can be done for different aspects. They can be done for weather, they can be done for agriculture. So for any particular aspect of human civilization, these things can be studied. Okay, so let me quickly say, so the mitigation is all about reducing the factors or alleviating the factors that cause climate change. Okay, so there are many important things we already discussed. The factors that are studied is that in order to do mitigation is that, can you do precision agriculture? Can you do more efficient farming? Can you reduce the use of pesticide, fertilizer, irrigation? So as you all know that machine learning and artificial intelligence has a huge role in precision agriculture. Computer vision, all this have a huge role. Second is, how do you prevent deforestation? Because if we keep our forest, then probably the emissions will be less and other things will be less. So how do you monitor wildfires? How do you monitor deforestation? How do you do an afforestation? Okay. And secondly, how do you control greenhouse gas emissions? Okay, so these are the mitigation strategies which are adopted, and everywhere machine learning can play a role. And then there are prediction problems. How do you accelerate the global climate models, the local climate models? How do you do the downscaling? How do you integrate climate models with machine learning? And climate models will only give you weather parameters, but agriculture, economy, they are related to these. Can you use machine learning for forecasting them as well? Okay, because how agriculture will go, you have to have a coupled model. You cannot just do it using climate model, and that's extremely complex, computationally challenging. So can you use data-driven method? Can you use machine learning to solve these problems? Finally, we study adaptations, like do you do a crop switching, or do you modify your farm management? Do you do a monitoring again to see how things are changing in certain part? Do you do a resilient genotype development? So all these are part of the adaptation strategies. There are many more. I'm just talking about few. And all these places will see examples that machine learning can help. So before going into these examples, how machine learning can help, let us quickly tell what machine learning is in a nutshell. I'm sure all of you are very much conversant with it. So it is a branch of artificial intelligence. The difference is the classical artificial intelligence depends on deductive reasoning. That means you are given the general cases. You are given, like, it's like geometry. You are given the axioms of geometry. And from that, you come to a particular theorem. So you assume the axioms. From there, you logically reason, and then prove a particular theorem. This is deductive reasoning. The reverse is inductive reasoning. That means the special cases are given to you. And can you, looking at several of these special cases, can you derive a general rule which applies to all the special cases? It's like mathematical induction. That's why it's called inductive reasoning. Mathematical induction is true for 1, 2, hence it is true for all I. So most of our human reasoning, many of it is inductive. Like when a child learns, child sees that birds, some birds it sees that birds fly. Then it will generalize that bird will fly. So this is inductive reasoning. So machine learning, artificial intelligence include both deductive and inductive. Machine learning is particularly interested about inductive reasoning. Okay, And the formal definition is a machine learning is a program or a hardware which, as it gets experience, just like a human being or any other intelligent organism, as it sees example, for a particular task, it does better and better. And how does it improves its performance? How does it improve its performance? You measure the performance in terms of some measure, some performance measure, and that measure will improve as we get more and more experience. This is unlike a normal computer program, which does not change itself. So there are three things. First is that it has to get an experience to change. Second thing, there should be some mechanism of adaptation or learning. And the third is when this learning is over, it should be able to generalize to new situations. This is the most critical part, generalize to new situations. Okay, so if these three aspects are there in any program or hardware, we can say it is a learning system. Okay, and we'll see that many cases, say for example, recognizing whether a plant has a particular disease. If you give more and more images of that diseased leaves of that type of disease, it will learn, and it will generalize in future to another field where it has just not seen before. And maybe the performance measure is how correctly it predicts whether this disease is there. Okay, so this is a very common thing. And why do we need this? We need this kind of inductive reasoning or machine learning, particularly in situations where which are complex, there is a lot of missing information. We don't have in a deductive reasoning is based on exact information. But unfortunately, such exact information is not available in many fields. In agriculture, we exactly don't know what is the particular reason for this amount of yield of rice plant, or what is the particular reason that this disease is occurring. Exact details we don't know. There are many parts of the information that are missing. We don't know. We are uncertain about them. And of course, there is a dynamic environment. Things change from every field to every field. Things change. The environment changes. So in such situations, it is very difficult to apply a deductive system. You have to apply a learning-based system. And even though this is a very buzzword now, but machine learning is actually an extension of statistical analysis. It's kind of an extension of non-parametric statistics as well as Bayesian statistics also. It is an extension of standard statistical technique. It's basically curve fitting in some sense, but with the additional aspects of generalization and computational complexity and other such things. It has also borrowed ideas from many other fields like cognitive science, decision theory, psychology, neuroscience, evolutionary model, information theory, data mining, control theory. It has borrowed from a lot of topics. Okay, it has borrowed from a lot of, I just try to, this maybe, this one. I'll just stop share and share again.
Yeah, fine.
So, yeah. Yes, sir, please, any questions, sir? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Whenever we do a machine learning problem in any domain of agriculture or other things, so following at the steps we need to follow. First of all, we have to identify the problem. What is the domain of the problem? What are the prior knowledge that are known? This is very critical. And what is the task that we are going to achieve? And then there is a data integration. This perhaps takes the most amount of time, data integration, cleaning, pre-processing. Those of you who do it every day know it very well, that a lot of time goes into data integration, cleaning, pre-processing. And then you have to do a feature selection. Which are the relevant features? Which variables we should consider? Then select the learning models, whether it be support vector machine, neural network, deep learning, whatever. Then evaluate the performance, interpret the result. This is also a very important step because these numbers, this confidence value, whatever, they are actually useful or not. Finally, you integrate it with an existing practice. So these are the steps to be followed. I'd be happy to later give a full longer term tutorial on each of these topics. If there is interest, I will be to young people. I can always give an talk on these things. Okay, and then regarding these learning models, there are 3 types, rather sometimes 4 types of learning model. One is supervised learning, where there is a teacher. There is a teacher which gives you training practice examples, like the input and what should be the desired output. Such examples are given. Okay, so classification, regression are all examples of supervised learning. Then there is exploratory or unsupervised learning. There is no teacher, but you have to just explore and find out patterns in the data. So all this clustering, anomaly detection, these are all examples of unsupervised learning. And finally, there is reinforcement learning, which is sometimes something in between, where teacher explicitly does not tell that for this input, this should be the output, but allows the system to produce an output, produce an action, and then either rewards or penalizes the action. So it directly does not tell it should be the value, but it gives a reward or a penalty based on how good the output or not good the output is. Okay, there is something in between. There is a mixture of supervised and unsupervised example learning. So some examples have output level, some examples do not have. We sometimes call it semi-supervised learning. Also, there are type of supervised learning where there is it's called active learning. That means the learner would ask that give me more. So suppose it is making mistake on recognizing some type of leaf images which have a particular type of disease. So it will ask the designer to give more examples of this kind of disease so that it can improve the performance. So this is called active learning. So as if the student asks question to the teacher that give me more exam or give me more practice problems of this type so that I can improve. Okay, so these are the learning paradigm. I am just outlining some of the applications of machine learning to climate change studies. In mitigation, where we take some measures to reduce the effect of climate change, they have been heavily applied to precision agriculture, which avoids fertilizer overuse, pesticide overuse. Another important application is where you monitor the resources. Of course, agricultural scientists have been doing it for a long time, but this is at a global scale where using satellite imagery, you monitor the land use patterns, changes, and other thing. And looking at these changes, you can identify that what is the trend. For example, do you observe that Sundarban is losing its coastline? So we should avoid that. It is like a warning message that comes to us. And the moment we get this warning message, we can take some action. So many of these remote sensing analysis, as you all know, heavily uses machine learning, computer vision for this monitoring purpose. I'll take some example where there are typical monitoring applications. Okay, there is a lot of application in prediction problems, say statistical downsampling or physics-based machine learning. This is a very important area. So machine learning so far is purely data-driven. You take data, you fit a model, get the answer. But there is a lot of knowledge that is available. So in general terminology, it's called the physics of the problem. Maybe you can also call it the biology of the problem also. So there is a lot of information available. People know that for example, say plant phenotype. A lot of models are available already, plant growth models. So a lot of literature is available. So say climate science, a lot of these fluid mechanics based equations are available for climate models. So still so far, the data driven model and the physics or biology driven model, they are on different paths. They are not interacting. But can we combine them? Can we combine them to develop better models? Can we integrate them? So this is a main focus area in applying machine learning to scientific problems. And of course, we have various applications in adaptations. What are the future projections? What are the optimizations you should do? How should you develop new genotypes which are resilient? Okay, so I'll quickly go through an example. some use cases rather. Regarding mitigating, as I have told, one important problem in mitigation is monitoring the earth, monitoring the globe. You monitor for deforestation, you monitor for forest fire, you monitor for how good are our afforestations, how good are our existing carbon stock in the forest, how are the wetlands, what are the farmlands, how is precision agriculture. So all these are monitored through remote sensing, heavily monitored. And it's kind of a world watcher. You are watching the entire world and you have set triggers. Whenever there is something which is harmful to the environment happening, there should be a warning message. So in order to develop such a warning system, it has to be completely automated because it is huge volume of data, remote sensing. So unless you fully automate it using machine learning and AI, you won't be able to build such a warning system. So there, as I have said, this is a picture taken from American US agricultural services. There are innumerable number of monitoring satellites that are available, also earth stations that are available, and sea stations that are available. And all these are monitored, and they has to be integrated to kind of monitor climate change. I'll give some quick examples. These are these are a bunch of research in a NSF project done by Professor Bipin Kumar in University of Minnesota. So this is a system called RAPT. So this is a global mapping of forest fire. So it looks at all these satellite pictures, and whenever some forest fire starts anywhere, it gives an early warning. Okay, and this is completely based on machine learning algorithms. And the thing about this problem is that there is no ground truth. It's difficult to find previous examples of wildfire. So in the absence of such ground truth, how do you learn this? Then mapping of plantations dynamics. So how is the forest getting affected by agriculture? So studying that. Okay, and not only a single time snap study, how is it progressing? What is the dynamics? How are things changing with time? So that dynamics is very important. That is driven by economy of it. There is another big project which is on modeling the flowing waters, the water dynamics, the hydrological flowing waters. So this has, there are a lot of remote sensing satellites. In fact, many more are going to be there in 2026, which monitors this water flow, which is again very critical for agriculture. And similarly, forest man. So these are projects. In our country also, there are some projects going on of this nature. I'm not retorted them. There are many projects going on. So one important project, for example, is the the human activity has increased in the Himalayan region. But Himalaya is a very fragile ecosystem as well as climatic zone, and many of the rivers of India are dependent on the glacial structure here. And you must have heard of many natural disasters. So if you want to make a sustainable mountain development, if you want to have a sustainable mountain development, you have to continuously monitor this kind of dynamics, agriculture, air pollution, disaster risks, biodiversity, everything you have to continuously monitor through satellite studies. Okay, and identify whenever there is a warning, you have to quickly identify and maybe modify your status like that. Modify your, maybe do disaster management or plan an alternate activity management. Okay, so this is a project going on in Institute of Himalayan Studies who monitor through satellite regularly. This is one study we have done with Chandan from IISR itself as part of his professional attachment training. So we are studying the climate impact on the phenological cycle of rice using EVI. So this is a study area around Kuch Bihar. And as you all know, the EVI of rice changes like this over the year. And what we found is that over the years, because of change in nighttime temperature and others, and the difference, this fall off from the maximum to the minimum, this has changes from peak EVI to mean EVI. That has changed, and we find that okay, there is a trend actually. There is a trend in different phenological phases. There is actually a trend. Okay, so we kind of detected this trend in the. So this study is important because we have purely used remote sensing images from Google Earth, and we have observed that this is happening. This is difficult to observe unless you make an Earth observation. Of course, it has to be validated later by ground studies. And we found that this is happening. This is something change that is happening. So what is the mitigation policy? Do we change our agricultural farm management practices? Do we change our genotypes? Okay, in fact, people have already been changing their genotypes, maybe because of this, some reason. Okay, so this is a kind of study, one small study we did. There are many other applications. You can do a land monitoring, crop area estimation. I think all of you are very much expert. All of you are very renowned in many of these areas. Crop program, cropping system, water resource monitoring, soil mapping. So in all these areas, this kind of machine learning or computer vision enhanced remote sensing based monitoring can help. Okay, this is another problem which is okay. So we have studied some examples of mitigation. Now let us see some prediction problem. This is one problem studied for Midwest USA for corn and soybean. And the idea is they had a hypothesis that climate variability will lead to crop yield variability. And they wanted to study two things. How does extreme weather affect crop yield? And what is the weather threshold under which crop yield will change? This is a study done at University of Minnesota. And this is kind of, they used several machine learning algorithms. This is the actual yield in different parts of Midwest of USA. Used deep neural network, Gaussian process, ensemble combination, neural network to GP pipeline, Bayesian neural network, another ensemble. And they kind of predicted what will be the yields under several future or several future weather scenarios. What will be the yield? And they found that there are some tipping points. There are some change points. And these are the parts where these change points may actually happen, which may lead to yield change, Okay, so these are some weather parameters under which change will happen. So this is in the Minnesota, Missouri, this region has been studied. So this is an example where just using machine learning, we can kind of predict what will be the variability in future and what will be the change points. This is another work which is based on downscaling or super resolution. So you have a crude global climate model for 2030, and on that they used a convolutional neural network. They call it FireNet, and do a super resolution and find out that what is the forest fire risk. So they predict the burnable, the burnable land from satellite images, which is MODIS. They do a climate model prediction, find out the temperature deviations, find out the burnable land, and then they finally predict which are the regions which are exposed to forest fire. Okay, using a convolutional neural network. And once you can predict this, then you can take extra precaution in those forest regions to prevent forest fires. Similar studies are also being taken care of by ISRO for the Uttarakhand forests. This is another interesting application I'll show you. So this kind of prediction, I said that it's not just weather prediction or vulnerability prediction. You can have a social level. This is a hydrological simulation, multi-agent simulation model based on machine learning. So where in a particular region, say you take a region, say the region around, say the northern part of Bihar, And you have the hydrological maps, you have the elevation maps, everything. You have the plant parameters, farmer practices, domestic patterns, you have the weather patterns. And then they run a simulation using integrating with machine learning. And they say that in future, if this is the change in weather pattern, what will be the change in farm practices? They just simulate that. Okay. And what is the agri socio behavior? They have done these studies. This is a study done by University of Paris for some grape cultivation region. So they can study it. Okay. And finally, I'd like to quickly mention that Microsoft has built a very big system called the Planetary Computer. So which basically using their Terra server, they run projections into the future. And it's a completely AI-based system. So when you are, say 30 years from now, you are planning to start some agriculture in
Dr. Pabitra, we are losing your voice. We are not able to hear you.
improved irrigation, you can increase agroforestry, you can have better irrigation, you can develop biocontrol. Okay, and there is a term now which is called climate smart agriculture. Okay, which is kind of not only smart agriculture for present but also under climate vulnerabilities. And I'll just quickly take an example of a resilient crop detection. So this is a very important research direction that is going on. So you project the biotic and abiotic stresses, and you do a molecular study, you do a genomic study, you do a physiological study, you go through the steps, high throughput genotyping, cultivars, and then finally using machine learning, you do a marker assisted selection. Okay, a GWS kind of thing. Okay, you get into stress tolerant cultivars. So this is the overall flow. And the thing is that machine learning can reduce the time of developing such cultivars. So it can reduce the genotype phenotype gap. Okay, using so this is the overall block diagram. So you do the genotypic study, you plant it, then you do a drone or other thing based surveillance, do some analytics, do a geospatial analytics, statistical modeling, crop simulation, everything, and then come up with the outcome. And based on this machine learning predictions, you use them in conjunction with your gene selection tools and have a better selection. So you have quickly machine learning will help you, because you don't have to wait for the full crop cycle to see whether it is a high yielding. You can do a yield prediction, you can do a you can select based on yield and quality, you can simulate biotic and abiotic stress. And this is a broad direction of research. This is one paper I referred to. It is a aerial and ground-based high throughput phenotyping for genetic dissection of NDVI as a proxy for drought adaptive test in wheat. Okay, so this is a kind of study which is increasing in practice, where you can use machine learning along with your gene selection tools to develop more resilient genotypes. Okay, there are many more problems. This is one famous challenge I think you have heard, where many machine learning people are trying their hands. It's a big data problem. It's the Syngenta crop challenge. So many various genotypes are given, and you have to kind of predict what their phenotype will be, yield will be, and so on. So this is a very popular challenge now among machine learning scientists. Okay, so with this, I think so most of these papers have been referred to 2 workshops. This is a conference called International Conference on Machine Learning, and this is called International Conference on Neural Information Processing and Learning Representation. Both of them had a workshop on AI for climate change. Many of the papers I have taken from them, and this is another paper by Bipin Kumar et al. It is a position paper for AI and machine learning for climate change. There are many more articles. There are hundreds of articles which apply machine learning, not only in climate change, with focus to agricultural implications of climate change. So with this, I end. I'll be happy to answer any question. I am, in fact, we are actively working on using AI, computer vision, machine learning in agricultural problem at IIT Kharagpur. We have a project from Ministry of Information Technology regarding this. Besides that, also many people are working, many students are working, both agricultural engineering department and computer science department. We are open to collaborations and exchange of ideas. And I'll be happy to discuss any question. I am sorry I gave a very hurried overview. I did not go into detail of any algorithm, but I can, if you want, I can really share the detailed references of each of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pabitra. We can have questions or clarifications from Professor Pabitra. Professor Pabitra, you can answer.
I can answer.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Actually, there are n number of machine learning models. Now the problem is we have data, we have models, but which data can be used for which kind of model? Can you just throw some light on it? Say, for example, for yield predictions, what kind of machine learning models can be used? Or for climate change variation, the change point you told, what kind of models can be used? Why? Because we have huge volume of data and there are n number of machine learning models. So how to choose that correct model? Or is it based on a trial and error? How it is worked?
No. Okay, very good question. And in fact, this is the central question. The thing is that there are three things to be noted while choosing a model. The first point to be noted is that what is the task? What is the nature of data? So is the nature of data, is it like a time series data, or a single vector data, or a more complex multimodal data? So the first thing to be done is that you have to decide what the task is, what is the nature of data. For example, if you are doing a time series prediction, say from NDVI or another, the algorithm that you use will be like hidden Markov model or recurrent neural network. Whereas if you are just doing, let's say, a detecting whether a image of a plant is having some disease, it will just be a convolution neural network or something. So the first point is to be, maybe I can share with you the guideline. There is one nice paper tutorial on a table kind of thing. So the first is which task. Second is how much data we have. There is a clear distinction among the machine learning algorithms. Some learning algorithms are very powerful, but they are very data hungry. It's like a sports car. They can run very fast, but they eat up a lot of petrol. So they are very data hungry. So if you have lots of data, huge amount of data, and your problem is difficult to solve, then you should go for a complex model, say a deep learning algorithm, convolutional neural network, AlexNet or something. On the other hand, if you have less amount of data, you have a small amount of data, but you have some knowledge about the problem that this is going to be linearly varying or something, then you choose things like support vector machine or Bayes classifier, or even k nearest neighbor, you choose such thing. So if you are heavy in data, you go for deep learning neural network. If you are light on data, you go for support vector machine, decision tree, Bayesian method, k nearest neighbor. And the second, one more thing I can tell you, currently most of the successful, the leader algorithms, the best algorithms are ensemble. They are combination of these algorithms. They are voting among them. They use all of these algorithms, and then the final prediction they do based on a voting among these. Everything. Major algorithms are ensemble algorithms, and so this is how much data you have is the second consideration. The third consideration is more detailed. So even if we choose whether it is a support vector machine or a neural network, then comes the question, how many layers of neural network, what type of kernel in support vector machine? This problem is difficult. There is no guideline for choosing this thing. So this has to be by experiment, by trial and error. So this last part has to be experiment. But the first part, what type of algorithm you take, how much data you have, there are clear guidelines for that. What I can do, I'll type my email in the chat box, and maybe I can, there is a nice table of chart. Maybe I should have shown
You
it
can share the
also.
link in the chat box, sir, if you can, please.
Okay, but I need to search it. Can I do it later, maybe?
No problem, no problem.
I'll send to Chandan. Maybe Chandan can share it later. I have his email.
Okay.
I'll maybe do it, because I have to search a little bit. I have to download it. So that is the guideline.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sir, I am Dr. Srinivas Reddy. Hello.
Yes, sir. Please.
Actually, sir, I am a hydrologist working in dealing with the hydrology of watersheds and all, particularly with respect to rainwater management. Sir, actually, if we have some auto-regression models developed for your region, can we incorporate these models into machine learning?
Yes, very much. Very much. So there are two ways you can integrate into machine learning. First is that they can act as a prior. That means you using your auto regression and all this, you have a hydrological model which will give you prediction. And then what you can do is that you can kind of define your error function by comparison with the auto regression model. That is one possibility. So the machine learning model should not diverge too much from the auto regression model. It can fine tune the auto regression model. It should not diverge too much. That is one way. And the second way is you can use it for data augmentation. Like you use the auto regression model, which is very commonly done in many weather prediction problems. You use your auto regression model to generate a lot of maybe artificial data, maybe not real data. You just simulate it, generate a lot of data, then train a neural network on this data.
Yeah.
So these are the two approaches which are already there in literature. Already there in literature.
Yeah.
I can share some of the literature on this also.
Yeah, we require, sir. Actually, if you can share it, we'll be very happy to
Yes,
use
I'll
that.
share with Chandan. Maybe he can share it with you.
Yeah. Another thing, sir, in the presentation, you were talking about that supervisory learning and then unsupervised learning. Mostly, actually, in the hydrology studies, we have the most of the rainfall data available for entire regions, but the runoff data, which is actually measured, is seldom available actually.
Yes.
Except two places. So mostly we may have this ungauged watersheds. So in these cases, how we should proceed? I mean, now to whether we should go for a supervising. That means
no,
supervising means you should have input and output available.
Specified, available. So you should go for semi-supervised learning.
Yeah.
So semi-supervised learning means for the point where you have the flow measurements available, for those points you have supervised data, and rest of the points you have unsupervised data.
Yeah.
So this is perfect situation where semi-supervised learning can be used. Is the perfect situation. I can share some literature on semi-supervised learning has been very much used in downscaling and other problem. I can share that. I can share that with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
My request would be Hema and Srinivas Reddy share their email addresses in the chat board so that
maybe I can
so
also
that Chandan can
my...
take those mails. So that Chandan can take those mails and then forward.
Yeah, I am in general. I am posting my email. You can directly, if you want, you can directly.
Yeah, pabitra@gmail.com.
So there are. I have just given an overview. Unfortunately, I have not talked about actual details, but I have the literature. I can share it.
Any other questions or clarifications?
Sir, here Hema again. Sir, what is the minimum number of years does a machine learning model should have for any prediction problem? Say for climate data, what is the minimum data we need? or we need only 20 years or 30 years, that large volume of data, or if we have last 5 years data also, can we predict using machine learning models? Will that give accurate result?
Yes, actually, so this question is very interesting. I will tell you whether it is a big data or small data. There are two measurements of how big a data is. One is called the computational measure. That means how many kilobyte or gigabyte or how many years, how many data point. Other is how much is necessary to learn the problem. So if your task is simple, I'll give you a simple example. So suppose you are doing a voltage versus current, Ohm's law. Just 2 points is enough to find out the resistance. If you have perfect measurement, just 2 points is enough. That is big data. So if your task is simple, for example, I have found that for usual monsoon prediction task or yield prediction task, just 3-4 year data is enough. And AVI, all this data is enough. But if you want to go for complex tasks, like say variability, or maybe dry spell, wet spell prediction. So this type of complex tasks, then you need maybe 20, 25, 30 year data. Okay. But for simple tasks, like say you are just want to predict the yield.
Yes.
Okay. For that, just 3, 4, 5 year data is enough.
Okay.
Our experience.
Okay. And for climate, sir, for next 5 years, how will be the climate will be? For that, how many years data we have minimum?
Okay.
Weather.
There are two sources. One is if you go to any of this Microsoft Terra server or Google server, if you give a time in future and a location anywhere on the globe and a time in future, it will give you the temperature, pressure, those parameters. Precipitation it cannot give, temperature, pressure it gives. So and these are based on simulation models, numerical models. But for the if you do one possibility is you use some of this numerical data. Additionally, you want to do a data science based thing. For that, for the next 4-5 years, I think around 20-30 years data is enough. That's enough.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
But you should always supplement your data by this numerical data that you get from the simulation models. That are very helpful.
Okay. Is that necessary? Is that a mandatory thing?
Not necessary, but we have observed that the performance is much better if we use this prediction data.
Oh, okay. Along with the actual data, you need to add this numerical data.
Yeah,
also.
you do a data augmentation.
Okay. Data augmentation. That is past year I have to do, right? If I'm doing for the last 5 years, then I have to do the data augmentation for the last 15 years or something like that.
Last 15 years.
Okay. If I don't have the data, I can do data augmentation with this numerical values.
Also, I'll tell you one situation. Suppose you want to predict for 2030.
Okay.
And you have data only till 2020. Let's say. So what you use, you data till 2020, and from 2021 to 2029, you get the projection data.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll answer all these questions that are there.
There is one more question. There is one more question in chat box.
Yes.
I'll read it out. Can you suggest some research aspects in training the plants like animals and now machines?
Oh, yes.
Dr. Ramesh, if you can
clarify
on the question.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon.
I'm Dr. Ramesh from SCSM University, Kanchipuram, sir. My research area is machine learning. I am not familiar with much more agricultural field. Anyway, my students are doing project in agriculture-based machine learning projects. My question is, can train the plants like the training our animals? Now we are training our machines to learn itself like that. Is there research are going on this aspect?
That I will not be able to answer. There are several researchers. Maybe Professor Prasad. I'm not capable enough to answer this. I don't know. Maybe the agricultural scientist. It's a question to the agricultural scientist, not to me. Maybe if anybody knows can answer. I am not sure because it is a biological system. What is the meaning of learning? How do you induce to learn? Those are
no. At present, we are training animals and the machines. Even we are training our machines.
See, the one
Why
thing
we are not?
we can do is that, okay, if you talk about learning, you can think about new genotype development as a form of learning. That is an adaptation, an evolution, new genotype development. If you talk of that as an case of learning, then maybe yes, then maybe we can help that. Genetic engineering can help that. Okay, but if you are talking about phenotype, that means the plant will, that's too complex. I mean, your only control is how much water you will put, how much fertilizer you will put, how much pesticide you will put. That's your only control. Nothing else you can affect. So I am not sure.
Okay.
I am sorry. I am unable to answer.
Yeah,
this.
this is.
Thank you.
Dr. Samuel, you want to say something?
No, sir. No, sir.
Any other colleague? Yeah, answer is coming from Dr. Maruti. Maybe we are training the plants through agronomic management. And that is what Dr. Pabitra also said, through precision agriculture. Right? Yes?
Yeah, exactly. And that is what maybe future biology will reveal something, but I don't think currently we are in that position.
Any other questions or clarifications? If no, let us give a big hand to Dr. Pabitra Mitra.
Thank you
for a very nice and elaborate presentation. Hopefully, we'll come back to you, Dr. Pabitra Mitra, for detailed presentations on some of the topics.
Yes. I'll be very happy.
Related to data augmentation, and one is RAPT algorithm and rare class prediction in absence of ground truth. I think more details on this would be really
very happy. I'll be very happy
useful
on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for
sir.
Agreeing to our request and delivering this talk. Over to Anshu.
Thank you, sir. So it is my proud privilege to propose a formal vote of thanks. First of all, my heartfelt thanks are to Dr. Pabitra Mitra for this a very thought-provoking and motivating and as well as an informative talk. Thank you, sir. We all know the importance of climate change, but the way you have put it in front of us with respect to the application of machine learning to handle climate change and climate change analysis has been really very, very informative for all of us. And we may look for more opportunities to hear from you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Dr. Rajna Prashad, our director, for always being there and supporting and motivating us for organizing such informative talks. My thanks are due to Dr. Ajit, who is the coordinator for this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. I would like to convey my thanks to Dr. Chandan De, who has been coordinating with Dr. Pabitra to organize this talk. I convey my sincere thanks to all the people who have joined online to be a part of this talk and have really actively participated in this. In the end, I thank one and all who have been directly or indirectly involved in organizing this lecture. Thank you, everyone. And I would wish a very, very safe stay of all of you in this pandemic. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I am really honored.
Thank you, Professor Pabitra.
Thank you, Dr.
We'll come back to you again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
I'll
share my presentation with Chandan.
Yes,
Maybe you can share with participants.
Yeah, we were just about to ask this. Thank you very much. So we will have it from Chandan.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anshu, now you can close the event if.
Thank you, sir.